Hello and happy last Wednesday on a Friday, everyone, but for most of you, it'll be Saturday. Today we're going to be doing a rundown, or kind of a read-through, of Tinto Talks number 38, and as you guys may be able to notice, it was dropped on the 20th of November. That is because we are playing catch-up. Well, that's not why it was dropped. It was dropped, but now we're going to be doing catch-up, and we've already said catch-up 3 times in this opening salvo, and that's because we really like fries. Okay. Hello and welcome to another Tinto Talks. This welcome is, of course, a little bit of a tease, because, of course, we're going to have a happy Wednesday, and that's definitely why they capitalized this W, because it's supposed to message and hint that we're going to have a happy Wednesday. Of course, this is a Friday, but for many of you, a Saturday. The day of the week where we spill information, that's right, the day of the week. You see, Wednesday, welcome Wednesday, where we spill information about our top secret game Where's our happy Wednesday? Terrible. Okay, but we will be going into Project Teaser, aka Project Kaiser, aka Project Teaser. Today we will delving of course, because this is the chat GPT word, rawr. Okay, into the world of societal values. Societal values, which this is kind of one I've been excited to read about, haven't read through it yet, but this is something that I would love to see kind of more of in terms of Victoria 3, like, in the abstracted conception of the idea of societal values, not necessarily the game implementation that is here in Project Teaser, but we are going to see. Different countries start with different societal values. This is one way you could give a country an advantage and allow it to shift to having a different advantage over the course of time, using something that is sandboxy, but still allows for different sorts of play styles for countries, creating a unique and different experience. Please, that values are all subject to testing. Please, that values. Please, that values. Okay. The societal value ranges from -100 to +100, where -100 value is completely to the left, and +100 is completely to the right of the value. Fair enough. They change slowly over time, primarily influenced by estate privileges, government reforms, or laws that the country has. However, if you feel that you can't wait for your society to change, shout out to society, we live in one, you can always have a member of the cabinet focus on attempting to nudge societal value to something else in your country. I have to imagine that should probably be not worth it most of the time, and if it is worth it, then societal values are probably a little overtuned, but we get effective skill of changing societal values on this gentleman here. Let's see, we see plus 25%, we get some royal marriage rights, crown power, it looks like a bunch of bonuses from the various things, from Alphonse Ragier de la Ria. I assume that is the member of the cabinet who is doing the changing, giving us 61%, and monthly progress to capital economy, capitalism. Alright, we're gonna go to the last place untainted by capitalism, space. There are 13 common societal values that all countries have at the start, and currently one unique focus for all countries in and around China, which will be talked about in later Tinto Talks, aka Project Teaser, T for teaser, the teaser. We have another one added in the age of absolutism as well. Some of these societal values may recognize the name or design intent from previous games like EU2 or EU3. Previous games, like EUT. Does this mean this is going to be Europa Universalis 5? Comment below, that would be crazy. Okay, but they almost always have different impacts. Centralization or versus decentralization. This is a classic. I remember the sliders in EU3. Very, I barely remember the sliders. I feel old, but we did have sliders. We get centralization. When it is dominant, it scales up to max crown power, a ton of extra maximum war exhaustion. Or is this a bad value? It's +5, but it's in red. We don't know how to handle these. We don't know how to handle minuses in green or pluses in red. I assume this is a positive value. Road building time is minus. All roads lead to Carthage, of course. Plus espionage, and this is what we get. And decentralization, we get maximum war exhaustion, -5, but it's in green. Distance cost capital, -25%. I think, is this for how much control you're going to get? Or distance cost capital, what is that exactly meaning? So we can implement more roads to decrease the negative effect of control, maybe, and then with distance cost to capital, maybe there's just less cost kind of natively, even without a road, something like this, I'm not sure. Counter espionage, we suck harder at, makes sense, and monthly rebel growth, minus 10%. because people are more happy being governed by people around them. Centralization increases crown power dramatically, but decentralized has other benefits. That makes sense. Traditionalist versus innovative. A traditionalist country prioritizes stability and tradition over all other values, while an innovative country wants more of a literate population and faster adaptation of new institutions. If they could read, they would hate that. Okay, a traditionalist, if they could read, what's the meme, like, if they could read, that would really make them mad. A traditionalist country will have higher estate satisfaction. Interesting. Stability will grow faster and a bigger cultural tradition growth, while institutions will be far more costly to embrace. An innovative country will pronounce innovative correctly and have a higher maximum literacy, bigger cultural influence growth, cheaper institution growth, but stability will be much slower to grow. This makes sense. Spiritualist versus humanist. This is kind of an interesting one to put at the start because, man, oh man. Well, I guess you just had most of the countries in the West in 1337 really dominated by spiritualist. A spiritualist organization pretty much, or well, at least of the European ones, I don't know if I put the European qualifier in front, is pretty much organized around its clergy, while a humanist country is much more tolerant towards heretics and heathen religions. A spiritualist country will convert pops faster, increase the amount of clergy in towns and cities, and increase the tolerance of the true faith while reducing the spread of assimilation. You know what's interesting is I believe clergy was one of the sources, kind of more of literacy and tech, at least at the game's start, or there was something about this, which could make going tech-oriented first maybe is actually going spiritualist first. A humanist country will assimilate pops faster, increase the tolerance of heathens and heretics, but reduce the speed of conversions. That makes sense. Aristocracy versus plutocracy. An aristocratic country, or an aristocratic country is about having the leadership from those who rose with noble blood, while a plutocratic country takes their leadership from the richest and the most powerful. Shout out to oligarchy. An aristocratic country will increase the amount of diplomats you get. Makes sense. The amount of noble pops in cities, increase the power of nobility, and the expected costs of the court. All this kind of makes sense. A plutocratic country will increase the number of burghers in the city, reduce the total cost of the court, increase trade efficiency, but dramatically increase the power of the burghers, which of course we want. Shout out to them. The serfdom versus free subjects. A country with high serfdom is about exploiting the peasants as much as possible, sending them into the mines, especially the children, whereas a country with free subjects treats peasants as human beings. Okay. There's serfdom, current impact of 10 towards serfdom, so this is just partial. I assume the max value is 10x if you go full serfdom, which would give, plus 20% maximum tax for peasants' estate, plus 10% of peasant food consumption. Why do they consume more? We feed them less. But this is a red modifier, which we hate that. Raw materials output plus 10%, supply limit plus 10%, assuming these scale linearly. Magna Carta, oh no, shout out to King John. And yeomanry will make England slowly go towards the free subjects. Yeah, inherited terrible position from Richard. John, the nickname for him is Lackland, and after John Lackland was king, they never named another John afterwards. That's why King John, you only need to refer to one King John. There's only been one. He did such a bad job as far as the aristocracy is concerned. They never had another King John. To be fair, King John just inherited a horrible position from his brother, Richard the Lionheart, who just ran up a whole bunch of debt. Probably the most hated king that really, I mean, he wasn't necessarily a good king, but he probably shouldn't be as hated as he is. Shout out to John. As you see, serfdom focused country increase possible tax for tax events, the raw materials they produce, and the supply limit in your country, while it increases the amount of food your peasants will eat. I guess if they work harder, they gotta eat harder. Work hard, eat hard. A country with free subjects, on the other hand, will increase a monthly prosperity, make pops promote faster, reduce the food consumption of peasants, but reduce the amount of tax you can collect from peasants. That doesn't sound good at all, except it probably does. Probably the building tall method. We get the wee-woos outside. Big nice. Someone did something naughty. Belligerent versus conciliatory. Yeah, that's the someone did something naughty wee-woo, not the someone fell down a well wee-woo. A belligerent country is a country that does not need to worry about the opinion of other countries. A conciliatory country appeases others, either due to being weaker, or it just believes that Hitler would have stopped it with taking the Anschluss. Shout out to you guys. A belligerent country will create a causes... will create a casus belli faster, get cheaper war score costs, and definitely result in the calling of the police. And a faster spy network construction, but the diplomatic reputation will suffer significantly, and eventually the world police will have to come and say, don't you do that, we're gonna call a police wagon for you. A conciliatory country will increase the efficacy of the cabinet, the loyalty of the subjects, and improve the diplomatic reputation, but casus belli will be far more difficult to create. All this makes sense. Probably, so currently one of the things I don't like about a lot of grand strategy games is that they don't really make it viable to not go to war very often. Going to war is, generally speaking, if you want to play optimally, it almost always involves going to war all the time. And I honestly kind of just like chilling and just ecoing and not doing the war thing. In Victoria 3, you just like you never should let your infamy decay to 0, because the benefit of going to war is so huge. The cost of war, especially against a bunch of the small ball countries, is virtually non-existent. And you also have a bunch of benefits just from having a military, even if you don't use it, such that paying for it anyways, just to not use it, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so you're not really rewarded. And so anytime there's a game system that rewards you for not going to war, being at war a lot, which this seems to maybe do, if going to war increases, your belligerence, and then I forget what they said about what would do it. I think that they said it would be primarily influenced by state privileges, government reforms, or laws the country has. Okay, but if going to war, for example, were to make you much more belligerent, then that would be something to consider as a downside. But a conciliatory country, increased efficacy of the cabinet, loyalty of the subjects, and improved diplomatic reputation. All these seem really good, and I really hope that there's like a low war playstyle in EU5 that is really dynamic and interesting, because that is honest to God how I prefer to play games. As much as I go to war in Vic 3, the main reason is just because it's good, not because I enjoy the playstyle. Me staying under 25 infamy for all of forever, even when it's better to turn and burn, isn't kind of a reflection of this in my playstyle. There's a lot of times once you can fight everyone at once, it's better to fight everyone at once, and like every run pretty much should just turn into a world conquest run in a theoretical sense. All right. Quality versus quantity. Everyone knows this one. Everyone's seen this one. An army that focuses on quality is focused better on making each soldier perform better. Man, this is so self-explanatory. While an army focused on quantity tries to get more people to fight in the battles. You say to the girl, send dudes, and she's like, send nudes, and you're like, no, send dudes. I need more men. I want quantity, not quality. A country that leans towards quality will have morale recover faster, gain a bonus to military tactics, and have a far higher initiative, but the maintenance costs will be higher. A country which favors quantity will have higher possible frontage, cheaper armies, less food consumed by armies, but the initiative will be far worse in battle. So one of these is probably going to be very much better than the other. At least that's how I think it is in EU4, but maybe I'm just opening up a can of comments section because I actually don't know what's theoretically best in EU4. But it seems like maybe it's easy to solve, and maybe it's just a matter of if you have a high pop country, quantity is better, and if you have a low pop country, quality is better. That's actually probably how it'll shake out, right? Okay, we have offensive versus defense, another classic. A country that is focused on offensive prefers to attack, yeah, that makes sense, and using their armies and navies in enemy locations, while a defensive country relies more on their forts to defeat the enemy. I really wish defensive seemed better in EU4. Otherwise, if it did, we might go it. But here we have offensive, army movement speed, which is an incredibly strong modifier, plus 10%, fort defense, minus 50%, siege ability, plus 10%, assault ability, plus 10%, and when defensive is dominant, you go slower. You have more fort defense, you have more combat speed. Combat speed is a bit of an interesting one. Does that mean you can dice up armies faster? But I don't even know what that means. Fortification minus 20% is an interesting one, though, which means you could maybe lean on an army that's slower to conscript up, and you use like a lot of forts, and then not having necessarily as big a raised army, but try and have some sort of conscription method. I don't know. Do you want to attack or defend? Easy choice or question mark? Okay, fair. Land versus naval. Country that is... so one thing that I think that in general, grand strategy games are not really good at capturing is how important Navy is, and like an interesting kind of naval play style. In a general sense, I'm excited to see what exactly gets cooked up with EU5 and Navy, but a country focused on land is a country without much of a coastline, while a naval-focused one may be one of the ones that values coastline more than others. Here we have actively wanted to avoid military-only attributes, as otherwise 99% would always go land. Basically, right? And so this is, I mean, it's like tough to balance. A land country will trace proximity quicker over land, trade over land, and have larger RGOs. Trade overseas is more... Wow, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Already that sounds great. A naval country will trace proximity quicker over water, trade over water, maritime presence is faster, but trade over land is more expensive. Wow, okay. I was expecting like military modifiers, and the fact that it's just like, we're going to talk about trade and tracing proximity. The fact that tracing proximity, you know, how much control you will have over provinces, if you will generate control easier over land or easier by water, it will depend on, you know, whether you're land or naval. That's super cool. Okay. Capital economy versus traditional economy. Capitalism all the way, shout out. A country with a capital economy is more focused on earning money, particularly from trade and in towns and cities, while the one with a traditional economy is more oriented towards living off of what the land provides. A capital economy will have cheaper buildings, lower bank interest rates, and higher production efficiency, while food production is reduced. A traditional economy will produce more raw materials, produce more food, and have a higher population capacity, but buildings will be more expensive. I don't know if this really sounds at all like, well, I mean, it just sounds like capital economy is better. If you produce more raw materials, but then the buildings cost more raw materials, then it's a wash. Like, if buildings are 10% more expensive and you produce, well, that's only the case. It's only a wash if most of your production goes towards the production of buildings, rather than, I guess you could trade away your resources. But maybe that's not the right abstraction. Anyways, individualism versus communalism, not to be confused with communism. I know the word looks really similar, but it's not the same word. Shout out to only reading half the word and then saying it anyway. A country based on individualism may get more exceptional characters, while one focused on communalism is all about the greater good of society. An individualistic country will have higher morale in its armies and navies, and far faster migration speed for its pops, but significantly lower state satisfaction. Interesting. A communalist country will have lower satisfaction threshold for pops to join rebels, far cheaper revoked privileges from the estates, a slight higher estate satisfaction, but pops will migrate slower. Lower satisfaction threshold for pops to join rebels. That seems like a bad one. It sounds like someone's joining the rebels right now. I mean, revoking privileges seems good. A higher estate satisfaction seems good. I'm probably just projecting like my own utopian ideal onto evaluating these. Individualism does seem better though. Okay. Just based on the description, which of course, it always comes down to the numbers, huh? Because if the numbers are absolutely huge for the penalties versus the bonuses, then it doesn't really matter. Mercantilism versus free trade. A mercantilist country aims to protect the market price of produced goods in their country, while a country focused on free trade wants to benefit more from trades across the world. For a mercantilist-dominated one, we get a minus trade maintenance, minus trade efficiency, a lot of extra market protection, 50%, so that's a lot. For every cent, there's 50. And export cost from market is plus 10%, while free trade gives you a stronger trade advantage, increased trade efficiency, minus market protection, and increased burgers' trade capacity. I imagine free trade is just going to be better, but if there's a specific good you need to protect, like iron in like wartime, and maybe this becomes important, then mercantilism would be better for that, I suppose. Outward versus inward. Shout out to belly buttons. An outward country focuses more on interacting with other countries, while an inward looking country looks inside on its borders. That makes sense. An outward country will have higher power projection, higher diplomatic capacity, and faster migration to colonies, but a lower cultural tradition growth. Cultural tradition. I wonder what this is. An inward country will have a higher crown power, higher control being a modifier that's going to be really important, faster cultural tradition growth, but the colonial migration will be very slow. That makes sense. Man, we do like our colonial empires, so I have to imagine I will end up trying to play more outward. And then liberalism versus absolutism. Whew, hot. A liberal country will emphasize the importance of civic liberties and legislative governing bodies, while an absolutist country will focus more on the centralized authority of its ruler while reigning in the power of the different estates. A liberal country will get higher cultural capacity, easier to get through requests in parliament. Its pops are less likely to support rebels, but the impact of estate power on cabinet positions is higher. Estate power from cabinet positions? I'm not sure this is necessarily a bad modifier because you can manipulate the estates how you want. I guess more state power, less crown power, right? An absolutist country will have higher crown power, cheaper to revoke privileges, quicker integration, but the expected cost of the court is higher. As mentioned earlier, the societal values appear from the age of absolutism and shapes the last two ages dramatically. Is this the first time we get spoiled that we're going to have ages? I mean, there are ages in EU4. Interesting. Stay tuned as next week, which was this week, we revisit a topic as it has been revised and already revisited, but in a video that we'll publish later because we are, as I had mentioned, we are catching up a la French fries. But I hope you enjoyed this, happy Wednesday on a next Friday. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm thing, and other than that, have a happy, probably by now, Saturday.